Hi everyone! A few members of the Seamwork team thought it would be fun if we shared some of our favorite things with you all, as well as our sewing spaces. So this week, Meg, Hayley, Taylor, Wallace, and I are going to share with you our favorite sewing tools. And yeah, let's see what's in everyone's sewing toolkit. So I'm actually going to share a couple of things that I like to use in order to prep my paper patterns before I cut out my fabric. The first tool I'm going to share is a pattern notcher. And a pattern notcher is basically just kind of like a hole punch. It has a small little almost like rectangular shape that it punches out, and I like to use it on any area in a pattern that includes a notch. It helps me see it and not forget it when I'm cutting things out. I found that if I didn't notch these little areas, I tended to forget to mark them on the fabric, and then when I was going to construct them, I wouldn't have any notches to match together. So yeah, notching tools, super handy. You can buy these for fairly cheap. I believe I bought this at Wawak. I can't quite remember how much, but it wasn't too expensive, and I use it all the time. Another marking tool that I like to use is kind of a combination of three things. This is an 1/8 inch circle punch, and then a mallet, and then a tiny cutting board. And I like to use that on my patterns for any place that has a circle marking. That way I get a nice clean circle so that I can mark on the fabric. I know that there are like combination tools where you just punch and close that, but this is what I had on hand from some bag making supplies, so I use that for paper as well. And then the last thing that I find super handy for prepping a paper pattern is an X-Acto blade. Totally unnecessary, but I find it super helpful. So on any patterns that have like buttonhole markings or button markings, I like to cut these areas out with the X-Acto blade, and then I have a clean area to mark through. So yeah, pattern notcher, X-Acto blade, and a circle marking punch.
Hi, I'm Meg. I'm the editor at Seamwork, and today I am going to share one of my favorite sewing tools with you. I'm using the term sewing tool pretty loosely here because it's actually a trash can. The reason I love this little accessory for my sewing room mostly is because my grandma made it, but also because it keeps me nice and tidy, which means that I spend less time sweeping up thread and scraps of paper, and I spend more time sewing. So I'm going to kind of show you around this little handy tool, and I encourage you to go and find a tutorial and make one of your own. All right, so the way this works is there is a pretty heavy bag here of sand. You can use it as a little pin cushion so that if you need to plop your pins into something while you're sewing, it's right there for you. And it's nice and heavy, so it keeps the trash can held on your desk or sewing surface. So my grandma made this. I haven't been able to find this exact tutorial, but this is just a little bean bag. And then this is just quilt binding. You could use a ribbon or just, create a little strap from fabric. And then the basket is fully lined. It's just a squared off at the bottom little basket here. And it has a plastic ring around the top to kind of keep the opening open, so you're not having to open anything. You can do it all one-handed. You can just flip it inside out when you need to dump your trash at the end of the day. And hopefully when you're using it, it'll keep your whole surface nice and clean and keep you motivated to just keep on sewing. Hope you enjoyed this little tool. Go out and find a tutorial. I think it would make a really fun project that you can customize with block printed fabric or a really cool print that you have in your stash.
Hi, I am Taylor. I am the product manager at Seamwork, and today I'm going to share my favorite sewing tool with you. what I'm going to share with you is not very significant, and I bet most people have it, but it's my seam ripper. I really love my seam ripper. It was a gift from a friend who goes antiquing all the time, and so she found this amazing, amazing seam ripper at a antique mall or store. I don't know, market. But it's so awesome because the seam ripper gets stored in there, so there's no poking or storage or even breaking when you're not using it. So you can just pull it and then put it in like that. Super handy, super awesome. Something that is making you'll find maybe a lot more like these now with a stiletto foot, but this one had one big seam ripper and then it had one small one, but it broke recently, which is sad. I accidentally dropped it. So I am in the hunt for finding new inserts for something like this, and I think I found something, but if you have any suggestions about where to find these, please let me know in the comments. I would really appreciate it. I love how sturdy this is. I love how pretty it is. It's just really beautiful and easy to use. So yeah, that's my favorite tool.
Hi, my name is Wallace and I am a pattern maker for Seamwork. One of my favorite sewing tools to use is spring-loaded scissors. When you pull the tab open, you can see that there's a small spring inside of these scissors, which means that when you are cutting fabric, the scissors pop open themselves, so then that saves you one less strain on your hands. In conjunction with these scissors, I also like to use a quilter's chalking tool, and an extra bonus tip if you're going to use one of these is instead of buying the expensive chalk refills, you can actually use baby powder instead, and it will save you quite a bit of money. So what I like to do is I like to lay my pattern pieces on my fabric, trace it out with the chalking tool, and then cut it out with the scissors.
Hi, I'm Hayley and I am the pattern designer here at Seamwork, and today I am going to show you my favorite sewing tool. So I believe in a small but good quality sewing kit. This is my sewing box here. It is very small. I don't like keeping a ton of different tools around, just the bare essentials and the best quality that I can afford. So the one thing that has changed my sewing game the most is really good cutting tools. When I first started sewing, I hated cutting. And then I realized that I was using kind of cruddy tools for the cutting. So when I upgraded, it really changed my enjoyment of that part of the process. It also improved the quality of my sewing, because if you are not cutting accurately, you cannot sew accurately. So I'm going to show you the 3 tools that I use that make cutting less painful for me and just are also kind of a joy to use. So first thing is a rotary cutter. This is an Alpha brand one. When you're using a rotary cutter though, make sure that you are changing out this blade often. Using a rotary cutter is a huge time saver, but it is not a time saver if your blade is dull and you're having to like go over the same section multiple times. But this will cut your cutting time down by half, I swear. Very much worth the investment. Not everything can be cut with a rotary cutter though, so you still are going to need a good pair of fabric shears. I think that a pair of these are classic like 8-inch Fiskars dressmaker shears are essential to like pretty much any sewing kit. If you invest in them, you're going to have them for a lifetime. Make a little cover for them like I did here. get them sharpened. This is a lifetime investment and really good for cutting into like corners and things that are just kind of hard to do with your rotary cutter. Last but not least, I have my most favorite little sewing snips. So these are really cool. I use them every single time I sew. They are spring action little snips. They're very ergonomic and lovely to use. I use them for trimming thread, but they have this super, super sharp point here that is really great for clipping corners and curved seam allowances. I also use it for grading seam allowances. It is an awesome tool and you can get really, really precise with it, which I love. These are like Fisker's brand. I think they're like 3-inch spring action thread snips. They're like 20 bucks, totally worth it. I've had this pair for like 7 years and I use them every single time I sew. So those are my favorite of all time sewing tools. I hope you enjoyed this and you find it helpful. I'm curious to know if you have a favorite sewing tool, especially if it is a favorite cutting tool. Help me upgrade my cutting game a little bit. Let me know in the comments below. I'll see you next time.
Thanks for joining us. We hope you enjoyed that. What are some of your favorite sewing tools? Please let us know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this video, please be sure to like and subscribe so that way you don't miss out on any future videos. Next week, we'll be sharing some of our favorite sewing books with you. Happy sewing!